Talk's friendly little proletariat uprising. America's first competition talk show. You're in the hub.
So you boys like this music, huh?
Yeah, dude, it's Guitar Hero. Stan and Kyle are really good at it.
Well, you kids want to see something really cool? Check this out. Once I rose above the noise and confusion, just to get a glimpse beyond this illusion. I was soaring ever higher.
Dad! What are you doing?
I can actually play a lot of these songs on a real guitar. You want me to teach you boys how?
That's gay, Mr. Marsh. Yeah, that's stupid, Dad.
The class of 2014 has a problem. You see, the class of 2014 is young. And that inherently is the problem. Because they are so young, the college class of 2014 does not have historical context for things they weren't around to live through. And according to one group of professors at Beloit College in Wisconsin, there is a mindset test that needs to be put in place, and has been put in place at Beloit for about 13 years to accommodate the students on their ignorance. Because after all, if students are in fact ignorant, you should not demand that they become knowledgeable in order to engage their ignorance. The 75 items that apparently the students are not familiar with. Things like the Jack Kevorkian case, things like Dan Quayle, things like the Rodney King verdict. All this stuff happened in the last couple of decades. It's amazing that, short-term memory loss. But the Russian missile strikes, if you grew up during the Cold War era and you understood that and you studied that, you lived through that back in the 80s and that kind of thing and much earlier, these are things that the students, the class of 2014 doesn't know. Of 75 things that the academics at Beloit College should not use in educating the students, because the students will be lost in the classroom, and you can't lose the students, else they don't learn. And so you can't have the students trying to learn things they don't know already, Rich, because if they do, they'll be concentrating on the things you're telling them and not learning. It makes sense, right?
I'm totally confused.
Crystal.
If the teacher is not prepared to teach the kids those things which they don't already know, then why are you in the teaching profession? I think the whole purpose for teachers is to fill that gap of knowledge based upon your own experience and your research, those things what the kids desire and need to know. And I think, yes, there are a lot of kids in the 2014 generation. My daughter is a 2021 generation era kid, and yeah, things that I experienced as a kid, she has no clue.
She won't even know South Park. That's tragic.
But that in no way diminishes the importance of her knowing that information. And so I think it's incumbent upon these professors to get off the dime and stop talking about what kids don't know and be about teaching them all the things that they need to know that are relevant and are going to help them make wise decisions as they grow older.
But and I see your point, but why expect children to learn new things when the point of education apparently is to reinforce existing stereotypes? Charles, I mean, you are building a more solid foundation of what they already think they know, right?
Yeah, you're basically, by doing this, you're reinforcing their narcissism. Instead of teaching them timeless truths, like maybe constitutional law, things that are timeless, that they need in their generation. And I think that's one reason that society swings, the pendulum swings from one extreme to the other. The World War II generation learned some real cold facts about how life is and how the world operates. They didn't teach it to our kids, and so in the 60s we had the 60s. If one generation that learns truths and lives through them doesn't pass them along to the next generation and force them to learn them or insist that they learn them, we're going to continue to swing to extremes.
Well, there's one professor, Tom McBride, who's involved in making the list here, Michelle. He's the one who said that this kind of information allows professors to craft more meaningful messages and to really, quite frankly, not jump to conclusions and be so worried, because they learn over time, over the experience of seeing how quickly these kids forget. The kids outgrow these things, and we as adults begin to realize that it wasn't really that bad to begin with, and our overreaction as adults is tempered a little bit. We aren't so overreactionary about our students. We become more like them, less jumpy or something. Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, the logic is there. Right? It's like, you're like, I mean, learning this in school, honestly, I think, I mean, I fear for the future of America and for the children learning this stuff because, quite frankly, like we're saying here, you know, God forbid we pull from the lessons of history to teach our students, to teach the next generation. I mean, you know, newsflash, I didn't grow up in the Civil War. I didn't carry a bayonet. I didn't grow up in World War II. I didn't see FDR, you know, screw up the country. So, therefore, there's really no reason for me to learn it, right? I mean, it's just superfluous, right? I mean, how, if you had to sit one of these folks down, how would you talk sense into this? How would you talk sense into the academic community today?
It's a tall order.
Whew.
I think the first thing I'd mention is that the cultural references that they're asking the professors not to make might be one of the more interesting things the professor says during that class, and that might be what ties it all in and helps the students to remember.
Yeah, I mean, you know, bring up some case studies and that type of thing, and force them to, you know, to move forward a little bit. But plus the fact that, you know, it scares me. I mean, Rich, you're a parent. It concerns me, and Charles, you too, that students are coming into school with a preconceived idea that they shouldn't be dealing with any of these things, which leads me to believe they've never been exposed to them. If they haven't been exposed to a lot of these historical anecdotes and references up to the point where they enter college, what have their parents been doing all along, and what have their schools been doing all along? Why are they this ill prepared, Charles?
We all have to take the blame for it, you know, and not only us, but our parents before us. It's an oft-repeating thing throughout history. One generation lives through something, especially if they live through a tough time, they learn a lot of lessons from it. Unfortunately, they want to insulate their kids from living through that pain, and we do too good a job. I know I did. And insulating our kids from living through those same trying character-building experiences, and we over-insulate them, and they end up being boastful dunces. Go look it up on the web. It's a perfect description of these guys. It's our fault.
Well, I mean, you know, and if you're watching this online, you're saying, these guys are full of it. But, I mean, the American Idol generation, it's an epidemic type of thing. If you watch 5 minutes of this, and it's kind of an enjoyable show, but you do see a case study in human psychology in America today. Because folks that absolutely have no business whatsoever being on stage, trying to sing a song, are all the time. I mean, the damn show is built on people that don't know they are really, really pathetic. And, you know, we sit there and gawk at them. But, I mean, the fact that a show can actually be on the air for, what is this, 10 or 12 years now, with enough lemmings in one country to actually feed the beast and have enough content to keep the show going, shows me we have an epidemic. We have got this many people ready to jump in front of the train and believe themselves to be something they're not. Rich?
I think we should never discount the value of some old-timey TV shows. All right? I mean, think about the Beverly Hillbillies back in the day. If it were not for Mr. Drysdale always trying to get Jack Clampet's money, we would never know the importance of banking today. At least I wouldn't. I mean, there was a reason why Mr. Drysdale always wanted Jack Clampet's money. Look at what's happening on Wall Street. These are things that we should not discount in our history, all right? Let's think about George Jefferson, that enterprising dry cleaner in downtown New York. I mean, who more to embrace free enterprise than George Jefferson? We should not discount those kinds of shows from our history from the 70s and the 80s. And I think it's an injustice that we have all these little tinny boppers teaching our kids what they think America is on various stations, which I won't call their name today.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I couldn't say. I mean, Charlie Brown, you know, if it weren't for Charlie Brown, the early animated stuff, you know, we wouldn't know how to hold a football properly. Or we would, and I mean, you know, and we'd know how to take advantage of those lesser beings around us. You know, but the thing about it is, ultimately, we are given context by history. And these are the kind of things that students are missing, I think, these days. And ultimately, I point out something G.K. Chesterton actually wrote, which fascinated me, is that we romance the future ultimately because we fear the past. Because we're conditioned to believe right now that the past is a limitation, that the past holds us back, that we can't look backward, when in fact, we're scared to death of it, because if we look backward, we have giants among us in our history who did great things, and they would call us to do similar things, and it reminds some of us that we are not our ancestors. We got a lot of work to do to become them. And quite frankly, if you're just talking about the future, what doesn't exist, you're living in a world that doesn't exist, you can make it whatever you want to, and that includes shrinking it down to a level that you can't control, which may not be much of a level at all. See you tomorrow.
Sitting alone in New York City, and I don't know